Welcome to Mom in Mind, where we dive into all aspects of perinatal mental health and wellness related to pregnancy, birth, loss, postpartum, and new parenthood. It's so much more than postpartum depression. We raise the volume on all of these topics in the hopes that someday everyone will have the support and info that they deserve before they need it. Please note this podcast is not a replacement for treatment by a professional or professional training. Hey there, welcome back to Mom in Mind. I'm your host, Dr. Kat. In this episode, we are going to be talking about the path to wellness with Adrienne Griffen. There are some really key factors that we know work and help to support perinatal moms and dads and anybody dealing with a perinatal mental health condition. And Postpartum Support Virginia have come up with a really nice way to outline what all of those factors are. And we're going to go over all of those with Adrienne today. She is the founder and executive director of Postpartum Support Virginia. Adrienne started a PSVA to fill a gap in services. When she experienced postpartum depression and anxiety in 2002, it took almost 6 months to find the help she needed. Since then, she's been providing information, outreach, and support to new mothers and the healthcare providers who serve them. For her efforts, Adrienne was selected as the Peer Specialist of the Year by the National Council for Behavioral Health in January 2016 and a Woman of Vision by Arlington County's Commission on the Status of Women in June 2018. Adrienne graduated from the US Naval Academy and has a master's in public policy from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. Her early career included military and federal government service at the White House, Pentagon, and IRS. Adrienne lives in Arlington, Virginia with her husband and 3 children. So I really hope as we get into this episode, it highlights for you the fundamentals of getting care and how important it is to attend to some of these so that we can be stepping into our wellness as soon as possible. Let's meet Adrienne. Welcome, Adrienne. Thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, thanks, Kat. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, I really love what you're bringing to us today, and I'm excited to really give a resource to everyone through the work that you're doing. So yeah, just give us a sense of what you're doing with the Path to Wellness, and we'll give some people some tools.
Okay, great. So the Path to Wellness is my attempt, or Postpartum Support Virginia's attempt, to kind of put on one page all the things that moms can do to help themselves recover from postpartum depression or anxiety or perinatal mood or anxiety disorders. And so, when I was volunteering with PSI, several years ago, I kept saying sort of the same things over and over to people. Well, here's what you can do. Here's what you can do. And I thought, you know what, why don't I just put it all down on one piece of paper so I can just send them the piece of paper. So,
right.
And it's not rocket science. It's all the things that we know fit together to help moms recover. Mm-hmm. And so it sort of starts with the basics and moves up through self-care to social support, therapy, and medication. And the way I envision it is almost like building blocks or a scaffolding, mm-hmm. where we start with the thing that is most widely accessible, which is self-care, and which costs nothing and which benefits most mothers. And then sort of we work our way up through interventions that become perhaps increasingly difficult to attain or more expensive, but also that fewer moms need, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So we always start with self-care. And, self-care has sort of gotten a bad rap these days as, self-care going to the spa or, right. Getting your nails done or whatever. But this is right. like basic stuff that we need to do so that we can function as human beings, never mind as moms who are experiencing a mental health issue.
Right.
So we always start with the self-care. And there's 4 key components for that: eat, sleep, exercise, and time off. And, whenever I talk about this, whenever I do a presentation or talk to new moms about this, we always start with sleep. And I could spend the next 45 minutes or the next 4 days talking about how important sleep is.
Right.
That is really the most important thing. And then we sort of layer on top of that, getting proper nutrition, getting mm-hmm. some exercise, and getting some much needed time off.
Yeah.
And it's all basic stuff, but that sort of goes out the window when you're a new mom, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. People will say sleep. Yeah, right. When? How? So when you're talking to moms about this, how do you help them to understand or incorporate self-care?
Right. So you talk about, if you're going to be a good mom to your children, you have to be a good mom to yourself. And that moms really need to recover from the physical and emotional challenges that they face either during pregnancy, during labor and delivery, or in the immediate postpartum period. Being pregnant and delivering a baby is sheer hard work.
Right.
You know, we're growing another human being. It's sapping all of our resources physically, and we don't even realize it. And then we go through the demands of labor and delivery. And for some women, you know, it can really, really wipe them out if you've had a C-section or a prolonged labor, you know, and our healthcare system just doesn't really take care of moms very well. We send moms home after a couple of days in the hospital and like, okay, you're on your own. And
Right.
you know, it's like, they don't even give you the basics about, you know, you should not go up and down stairs, or, you know, you shouldn't be resting or whatever. They're like, do whatever feels good. So we sort of take it back down to the basics. And, you know, I always focus with sleep initially. And I say to new moms, you know, you really need to target getting 4 to 5 hours of uninterrupted sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, new moms laugh or cry because seriously, how do you string that together?
Right.
And I tell the story about how I did it. So I had postpartum issues after my second, and then we decided to have a third baby, and we put a lot more things in place. And the very first thing that we put in place was ensuring that I had my 4 to 5 hours of protected sleep. I'm a very sleep sensitive person.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided from the get-go that the baby was going to get at least 1 bottle a day.
Mm-hmm.
And just so I could give up at least just 1 feeding.
Right.
And so, you know, after breastfeeding was well established and all that, so after a couple of weeks, we recognized that baby number 3 was sleeping mostly during the early part of the evening. And so, you know, I would get the 4-year-old and the 2-year-old in bed at 8 o'clock. And literally at 8:05, I would go down to the basement, you know, put my earplugs in, curl up on the sofa, or we had a guest bedroom down there, and my husband would stay up with our infant, and, you know, it was World Series time and he loves baseball. So he's like, fine, I'll stay up. And, you know, he would give her a bottle of breast milk or a bottle of formula or a bottle of beer. I don't know. I don't care. Cause like I needed that sleep. I had 3 little people to take care of. Like sleep is not a luxury when you're a new mom. It is a necessity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I explained to women about the sleep cycles, about how, you know, with each sleep cycle, you go into a little bit more deep sleep. And it isn't until you get that 4 to 5 hours of connected sleep that you've gone through enough deep sleep where it's been restorative.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so I would sleep from like 8 p.m. to like, you know, midnight or 1 a.m. And I was mostly breastfeeding. So I'd wake up because of course I needed to breastfeed. Mm-hmm. And then I would sort of take over and be in charge of the baby, and my husband would get his 4 to 5 hours of sleep. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's very unromantic. And, right. You know, lots of women, like I just talked to a new mom a couple of days ago, and she said, you know, I guess the baby's like 2 months old, and, you know, she's, you know, not feeling well. So we were talking about sleep, and I said, well, what time does the baby go to sleep at night? And she said, well, usually like around 8. And I said, well, when do you go to sleep? She goes, well, like around 10. I said, well, what are you doing in those 2 hours? Well, you know, I'm sitting with my husband. We're connecting. We're talking about our day. I said, I know that's lovely.
Right.
But your priority right now needs to be taking care of yourself. Mm-hmm. Right. You know, we have this glorified image that we're just going to, you know, it's all going to be so lovely, and we're going to be gazing into our husband's eyes or our partner's eyes or whatever. And I'm like, this is about survival. Right.
Right. Yeah. Very plain.
Yeah. So
we got to get through this.
We got to get through this, and sleep is the number one thing that we start with. Yeah. Right. Because if you're without sleep, like you just cannot function.
Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely.
I mean, there's a reason that sleep deprivation is used as a form of torture for prisoners of war, because after a certain amount of time of not getting that sleep, like your brain just doesn't function anymore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, right. That's like at the foundation of all of this. That is a great place to start.
Right. So I love that. Yeah. So the self-care is sort of the foundation. So after we talk about sleep, and I can come back and talk more about sleep, then we talk about nutrition, eating properly. And we say new moms need to eat every time that they feed baby. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it doesn't have to be a gourmet meal, but like nutrient dense, high protein, frequent snacks and lots of water. Mm-hmm. You know, and again, I remember, you know, when my babies would be breastfeeding, and I'd sit down with them, and I'm like, you know, because they're crying, you pick them up, you sit down right away and stop them, and you start feeding them. And then I'm like, okay, I forgot my water bottle. I forgot my granola bar. You know, now I'm stuck here for the next 30 minutes while this baby's feeding and I can't get up. And so we talk about maybe stocking a feeding station at wherever, you know, if you typically sit in the same place to feed baby, stock a feeding station for yourself. Put the cooler there with some snacks, maybe a sandwich or yogurt or cheese sticks, water bottles, whatever. And then you're always ready. And this is something that, like, you know, dad can do, or a friend or somebody who says, what can I do to help? Stock the feeding station, right? Make it easy for mom. We need to be taking care of mom so she can take care of baby. Right.
That's
so, especially if mom's breastfeeding, because, mom is expending extra calories in the breast milk and in making breast milk. So she does need to be replenishing herself throughout the course of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's one of those things that just eating kind of goes by the wayside. I can't even just count how many times I hear people say it comes to 3:00 and they realize they haven't had anything yet to eat for the day.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. It's really hard to function without food.
It is. And if you have more than one child, like I do remember, again, having like the 5, the 2.5, and the newborn. And like what I ate that day consisted of bread crusts from their peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and, not healthy food. We sort of have to if you can take those 5 or 10 minutes to get yourself organized for food for yourself for the day, that can be helpful. Yeah. So, so sleep, eat, exercise. And again, when I say exercise to new moms, they all laugh because they think I'm talking about running them the Boston Marathon. No, I'm talking about like some gentle exercise. And mostly what I talk about is, getting outside and getting for a walk around the block, around the neighborhood, around, the community center, around the mall, wherever you feel safe. Putting baby in a stroller or in Baby Bjorn or the tummy pack and getting outside. And it's amazing what happens with the change of scenery, the fresh air, the vitamin D from the sun, endorphins that are released when you exercise. Like all of those things together make a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It seems like for some moms, it's really hard to get outside sometimes just because of, it can feel like a lot, but, every time someone actually is able to get outside, they typically feel better.
Absolutely. And, I was holding somebody's baby the other day who was fussy. And I said, let's just go outside for a second. And you walk outside and baby always stops crying. It's the strangest thing. It's like the fresh air or the change in barometric pressure or something. I don't know. But I'm sure this is anecdotal. There's no, evidence-based study on this. But it does seem that, just having that change in scenery does a lot for a baby who's crying too. So, and it's something that mom can then say she did at the end of the day. Hey, I took my walk, and feel accomplished. And it's huge. I remember getting that baby all bundled up, getting the 2-year-old, the 5-year-old, getting everybody in their winter coats or whatever. And then sure enough, baby would need a diaper change and we'd start all over. And so, it is quite an accomplishment when you have a new baby to get out for a walk. So your mom needs to pat herself on the back and recognize that she's done something important.
Totally. Right. Absolutely.
Okay. So we did sleep, eat, exercise, and then time off. And again, I mean a little bit of time. Like, can you get 10 or 15 minutes to yourself to figure out what makes you better for the day? Like, maybe for some women, it's doing a little bit of yoga or some deep breathing or some meditation or journaling. For me, it was getting a shower. Right. I needed to know that my husband was in charge of all 3 children and that I could get a shower before he left for work, because otherwise it wasn't going to happen all day. And that was just not good for anybody. So, just spending a little time of figuring out what you need if you had 10 or 15 minutes that would make you feel like you could get through the day.
So, you're not talking about going for a spa day. It doesn't have to be a big production. Although, fine, if you can do a spa day, go for it. But this is
absolutely. But this is like on a daily basis. These 4 things: sleep, eat, exercise, time off. Yeah. And, you may not get all 4 of them every day, but if you can sort of start to work them into your routine, it makes a huge difference. And like, I remember when somebody was telling me this and I was like, oh yeah, right. Like, how is this going to help? I feel like all I really want to do is run away and go sleep for a month. But, you slowly start filling yourself up again. Like, your moms are so depleted. Our reserves are down. So we have no patience, no room for error. Like, I remember the smallest thing would just set me off because I was so just exhausted and overwhelmed and was not taking care of the basic needs.
It's hard. It's hard when you're stretched so thin. Yeah, to keep it together. Your patience is low, irritation is high. Just having those couple of minutes can be powerful.
Absolutely. And it's funny, I've been talking with a new mom recently who has the 4-year-old, the 2-year-old, and a newborn. And we're talking about how, we used to manage our anxiety. Like, I didn't really even know I had anxiety. I just knew that I needed a lot of sleep. I knew that I needed to exercise to keep my mood level and that I needed to eat healthfully. And I was able to do that when I was young and single because there were no other demands on my time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to recognize that we need to put those things back in our life is really, really important. Yeah. And that mom has to take care of herself so she can take care of the rest of the family.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are like really important pillars here and foundational things. So thank you for running through that and giving really concrete examples. I mean, like in the fog of new motherhood, new parenthood, it's hard to sometimes just think like logically. And so what actually can I do? And those are really, really great takeaways.
Right. And what's really important to recognize is none of those things cost anything.
Right. Yeah.
They are all things that you can build into your life without paying for anything else.
Perfect. Right. Yeah.
And there are also great things when somebody says, well, what can I do to help? You can say, okay, could you hold the baby so I can take a shower? Mm-hmm. Could you, stock my feeding station? Mm-hmm. Very concrete things that other people can do to help.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much for that.
Okay, so that's self-care. All the foundation.
Yeah. And then what comes?
So next up the ladder is social support. And, this is so, so important for new moms. For all of us, really, we all crave a sense of community. But for new moms who may be, at home for the first time by themselves, so many women now work up until baby is born and then they're at home and they don't know anybody else who's at home during the day. All of their friends are working and that was their whole life. And so, getting connected to other women who are going through the same thing in life, whether it's, being a new mom or being a new mom with postpartum depression is really important because we all want to be with people who are going through the same thing. It validates what we go through. It normalizes it. It makes us realize that we're not alone, that we're not the only one feeling like this. Because, most women who go through postpartum depression or anxiety feel like they're the only one who's ever felt like this. That nobody else could feel this horribly, right? Until we start talking with others and we're like, oh, you went through that too? Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say misery loves company. That's not it. But it's this idea that we want to be with people who are going through what we're going through.
Yeah, it's a terrible feeling to feel alone. It's really, really hard.
Right. So that social support can come in many ways. I mean, fortunately through Postpartum Support International and its various chapters, there's online support, there's virtual support groups, there's in-person support groups, there's volunteers that you can talk to on the phone, new moms groups and breastfeeding groups and La Leche League and all kinds of groups are available for new moms. You've got to do a little bit of work sometimes to find them and maybe to find the group that works for you. Mm-hmm. But there's lots of opportunities for free social support. And you can even create it on your own. Like, fortunately, my two sisters were having children at the same time. And, now through texting and FaceTime and all kinds of stuff, I mean, you can build that social support right through your phone, right? Yeah, but there also, that does not take the place of sort of in-person social support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You can feel supported both ways, but there is something absolutely about being able to sit with other moms in person. That's really powerful.
Right. Absolutely. And, it is funny because we do have these devices and, lots of moms will be on Facebook or Instagram or whatever while they're sitting feeding their baby or whatever. And yet they still say they feel so alone. There is something about that in-person support that's just an intangible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just human connection. It's really hard to feel that through devices sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need like a knowing glance or, just to see somebody else's head nodding while you're talking.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why? That is so validating, right?
It is. Yeah.
And that's what I always say. Our support groups do three things. They normalize, they validate, and they offer hope. And part of the magic of the support group or postpartum support group is that you see moms who are starting to recover and they can give advice and support and encouragement to the new moms. And the new moms can see, oh, in a few months, I can actually, be feeling better.
Yeah.
And so the mom who's feeling better can look back and say, wow, I've really come a long way.
Yeah.
So it's mutually beneficial.
Yeah, most definitely. I have seen that too. And it's a beautiful process to watch as a therapist, and I just love to see people go through that process of getting it and realizing that they're not alone. It's so cool.
Right. And then we can also compliment mom when she's doing something that's positive for her baby. Like, I can't tell you how many times, mom will be talking in support group and she'll be like, oh, I'm such a bad mother. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help my baby. I don't know that, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. Meanwhile, she's doing everything right. She's rocking baby, or she's feeding baby, or she's burping baby. And we can say to her, but look, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. And she's like, oh, I am? Oh, I am, Yeah. So it's like you're getting this positive feedback for just doing what comes naturally.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. I think it's really hard to translate, when you feel bad, it's hard to imagine that you're doing a good job because our feelings are so intense. But yeah, absolutely. I've definitely seen people doing a really, really good job of mothering while they feel terrible.
Right. And so we can point that out to them and give that positive reinforcement. And again, all of these support groups are free, right?
Yeah. So cool. Great.
And most of them, all of the postpartum support groups that Postpartum Support Virginia runs, and I'm guessing most through Postpartum Support International, you can bring your baby, right? Mm-hmm. So there's no need to find a babysitter, or if you're feeling anxious about leaving baby alone, of course we welcome, everybody can bring what we say babies in arms. Yeah. And so again, it's free. You don't have any babysitting needs. Our groups are all open to women who are either pregnant or in their first year postpartum. And just another opportunity, another tool in the toolkit on the way to recovery.
Yeah, I think it's a really powerful one for sure.
Yeah, and I know support groups aren't for everybody, but it is really a great way. Some people come once, they get the information they need, they've made a few connections, they feel better. Other women come repeatedly. They come back when they're pregnant again the second time to put supports in place so it doesn't happen again. So social support is really pretty amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is. I've seen it help so many people too. So you did mention though that for some people, social support is not for them. What do you suggest for people who feel that way? Or for if that groups are not for them? Right.
So the next piece of the puzzle is talk therapy or counseling. And we have found that, studies have shown that short-term pragmatic therapy in the postpartum period can be amazingly helpful to mostly have mom be able to gain some kind of control over her emotions and to find some symptom relief. Mm-hmm. So I'm not a therapist, but we've been working in this field for about 10 years. And all the therapists that I talk with who specialize in treating women with PMADs say that this is, not time for Freudian psychoanalysis.
Right. No.
It's symptom relief, emotional control, get mom coping so that she can be a good mom for her baby. Yeah. And so, the therapists that we recommend typically use either cognitive behavioral therapy or interpersonal therapy, coupled a lot with mindfulness approaches to within, a short amount of sessions, 6 to 8 to 10 sessions or so, mom is able to start feeling better.
Right.
And you're a therapist. You could probably talk a little bit more about this.
Oh, just in terms of talk therapy. Yeah, that's very common in terms of my practice too, that people are coming in really need stabilization first and kind of the shoring up and getting all of the points you're talking about, getting these foundational things in place. And sometimes it's we're doing a lot of problem solving, how to do that. Who do you talk to? How can you have that conversation? If it's, if you're, especially for moms who typically don't ask for help, it can be hard to find the language for that. So we might be going into just some, problem solving to help get them feeling shored up and get some of the sleep under their belt and eating and having those connections and helping them to not feel alone. And then once there's a little bit more, they kind of feel out of the fog a little bit, then if there are other deeper issues or things that are coming up from either their past or that are complications of their current relationships, then we can start working on that to help the finer points, help them through those points. But really until those foundational things are in place and they're feeling stable, getting into deep-rooted, past trauma type stuff is more destabilizing. Sometimes it depends, but yeah. So pretty much exactly what you said.
Yeah. It's funny. One of the therapists that I really admire here in the DC area, she describes women as being very brittle in this time frame.
Yeah.
And the idea is they're on the verge of cracking, and it's sort of okay, softening them up a little bit so that they're not about to crack.
Yeah.
That they're not going to lose it. Right. Mm-hmm. Like you said, sort of making them more pliable kind of, and expand, giving more bandwidth and more resiliency. And then, like you said, then you can do a deeper dive into if there's any particular issues that are surfacing during this time frame.
Yeah. Yeah. And those can be really powerful. Sometimes people are coming in for therapy and maybe they kind of knew that they could have used therapy a long time ago, but this whole motherhood thing has kind of pushed them into, okay, I really, want to deal with some of this stuff now because I don't want it to affect my kids, or I want to have a better relationship, or so on and so forth. So it can take many, many different routes, but really, helping people to feel, stabilized and more pliable, like you said, is really the first goal.
Yeah. Good. Well, I'm glad we're all on the same page about that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So then in addition to therapy is medication if necessary.
Yeah.
And, we never, or hardly ever, if I'm talking with new moms, do we ever jump right to the medication aspect. And unfortunately, that's what our public persona sort of is about depression. You need medication.
Oh, right.
That there's all these other things that you can do. And yes, maybe add some medication to it. And fortunately, there are medications that are safe to take if a woman is either pregnant or breastfeeding. A lot has changed in that world.
Yeah.
Even up until, 10 years ago, and unfortunately we still have some cases where, an obstetrician will say to a woman who's pregnant, well, you need to go off your antidepressant medication if you're on it, or she won't treat a mom, won't put her on medication. And similarly, we have some psychiatrists who say, well, if you're pregnant, I can't treat you.
Right.
Fortunately, through the work of people like you and Postpartum Support International and others, we now know that medication is a real and safe option in many, many cases. I know in the PSI video, they talk about how if you were diagnosed, say, with diabetes, you would not only be prescribed insulin, but there would be changes in your lifestyle, whether it was diet or exercise or whatever, similar to mental health issues. I mean, there's lots of ways to approach it, and medication is one of the many tools that we have.
Yeah. And sometimes it's life-saving, really.
Yeah.
When symptoms get that intense. I mean, it's absolutely an option. And, just like you were saying, unfortunately, there's just so much misconception out there and misinformation about what is safe and not. Like as you were talking about, I was thinking about this one client I have who, is taking a medication while nursing, but it's a very low dose and the provider won't increase the dose because they said, well, I can't increase the dose because you're breastfeeding. And it's such a low dose already that it's not really effective. And I'm like, well, here, call these people. They know you can consult with Postpartum Support International on that. And with an actual reproductive psychiatrist, you can get actual information. And sometimes patients and clients are having to advocate for themselves to get the medication they want.
I know. And it's so hard. You're already so overwhelmed and confused. And, you're getting these mixed messages about medication. And it can be really, really confusing for moms.
Yeah.
And of course, and that approach of, well, I'm not going to increase your dosage. Well, I mean, then what good is it to be on medication? Now you're exposing the baby to both the medication and the illness, right?
Yeah.
One of the psychiatrists that we work with all the time, her number one thing is, treat to remission. If you're going to be taking medication, take enough of it where you're realizing the benefits. Otherwise, you're just exposing yourself to both the illness and the medication.
Yeah. It's hardly.
And I find I know. It's so interesting. If a woman is pregnant and say she has to take thyroid medication, nobody would ever suggest to her that she stop taking her thyroid medication.
Right.
Or if she were diabetic, nobody would say, well, stop taking your insulin, right?
Yeah.
Or, if she had some other illness. And yet, when women with mental health issues become pregnant, oftentimes they are told to stop taking their antidepressant. Like, why is mental health medicine optional? That doesn't make any sense.
I know.
Yeah.
I share your frustration.
Yeah.
It's just terrible. But I think with like conversations like you're having right now and that we're having right now, and even just a beautiful infographic that you made for Postpartum Support Virginia, having all of this just outlined, here it is, self-care, here it is, social support, talk therapy, medication, it really adds to the destigmatization, and it adds to the, people feeling like, oh, this is actually a valid form of support for me. I don't have to feel ashamed. I can just go do this.
Right. And, we say with this whole path to wellness that there's these different pieces, and some combination of all of these different things is going to help every woman get well again. For some, just getting that sleep is enough. For some, it's that talk therapy. For others, it's a little bit of all of these things, put together.
Yeah. Right.
And that there's no shame in any of these things. And they are all valuable interventions. It's so funny. I've been doing this volunteer work through PSI for a long time. And one of my colleagues and I, Lynn McIntyre, who was the coordinator in DC for many, many years, we would answer phones, we'd talk to moms, we'd encourage them to support group or whatever, and we would never hear from them again. And we're like, gosh, what are we doing wrong? Why aren't they coming to our support group? Why aren't they getting to the therapist that we recommended? And we finally realized that sometimes just the intervention of talking to us on the phone was enough to get that mom going in the right direction.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
That's so true.
So is that social support aspect, again, just not in the support group form.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sure what you do all the time is validation and saying, yeah, this is a thing. It exists. You're not crazy. There's help and support for this. And even just that I find is so, so powerful.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's still so, all this good work that we're all doing, and it's still so frustrating that, women are going into pregnancy and into motherhood without this being talked about, and I don't know why we do our moms collectively such a disservice, but this is the most common complication of pregnancy and childbirth, and yet still not talked about. So, I mean, we're getting there. We're certainly making changes, but it is still a little frustrating,
Yeah.
What's it going to take?
It's very, very frustrating. But I mean, with the work that you're doing. So like I mentioned before, you have this beautiful infographic, and I want to put a link to our show notes so that people can have this. And I assume they can download it and just look at it.
Oh, yes, please. Yes. Download, copy, reproduce, put it in your own words, whatever works for you. I actually sort of tailored this from Jane Honickman had her plan of action included like 7 or 9 different steps, and I couldn't remember all of them. So I tried to condense it down into the 4 that I could remember. Yeah. Right. So this is not rocket science. This is really, it's out there. This is what everybody knows is really what moms need to do to recover.
Yeah. And that's what I think is so beautiful about this is that, no, it's not rocket science, but when we're faced with things that we don't understand, it feels like it's going to be a mystery to solve it. And when you see it in the infographic, like you guys have laid it out, it's just like, oh, it's just that simple. It doesn't need to be complicated. You don't have to spend $1 million to get better. There are things you can do right now.
Right. Yeah.
So I'll definitely.
I'm so glad that you liked it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the sleep thing because I did forget to mention something really, a couple of important points.
Absolutely.
One is, well, what about for a mom who's a single mom? Mm-hmm. How is she ever going to get this connected sleep?
Right.
And so, one of the things that we help do is sort of brainstorm, okay, who is in your life who can help? If you don't have a partner, how about your mom, sister, a cousin, an aunt, your grandmother? Do you have a friend who's a single mom? Mm-hmm. How about if the two of you get together on the weekend and have a sleepover and you take the first shift and she takes the second shift? Mm-hmm. And, you may not be able to get 7 nights a week where you have 4 to 5 hours of connected sleep. But if you can get, 2 or 3 nights in a row, that will certainly help restore. So this isn't like, okay, if I can't do it perfectly, should I even try it? Well, yes, of course. We want you to help find ways to get some of this done.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that in. That's so true.
Yeah. The other one that I hear all the time is, well, my partner, my husband, whoever, he or she goes to work. And so I can't ask him to get up in the middle of the night. I'm like, hang on 1 second, time out. You worked up until the day the baby was born, right? What is easier? Going to work or staying home with a newborn? Mm-hmm. And everybody agrees going to work is probably a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. And so, again, we say, okay, so try this, negotiate with your partner and say, all right, so I heard that, let's see if I go to bed early and maybe get 4 or 5 hours of sleep, I've heard this is supposed to be really helpful. How about if we try this like on Friday night? Mm-hmm. And so that, assuming that the partner doesn't have to go to work on Saturday, they can sort of make up for their sleep. And then, if you do it for 2 or 3 nights, you can say, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. Could we do it for another couple of nights? Mm-hmm. And then, suddenly, maybe you've gone a week or, baby starts sleeping a little bit longer. Like this isn't forever. And I think this is partly what we need to remember is that like all these things that we're talking about, this is not forever. This is short term. Mm-hmm. until mom starts feeling well again.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's a matter of days or weeks. It's not like this is going to go on forever.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Right. And the sooner that you can kind of get on top of your sleep and eating and all these self-care things, the most likely the less time it will take to get to that point where you're feeling better.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. This is great. Yeah. Those are such good points. That whole negotiating for sleep piece is really hard for some people, but I love how you framed it as kind of like an experiment. Let's see how this works. And really emphasizing that this is not forever change. It's just like, we're going to need to do this for a little bit. It's very helpful. It's really useful language for people to take from here and use with their partners.
Yeah. As with everything in life, it's just a phase, and especially as a new parent, I just remember thinking, I'm never going to sleep again. Right. So,
yeah,
everything just seems like it's forever, especially if you're up in the middle of the night, feeding that baby and you think, I'm the only person in the world who's awake. I'm so alone. I mean, I had my postpartum baby was born in December. And so I remember being up in the middle of the night and I'm thinking, I'm the only person awake. Everybody else is asleep. Everybody in the whole world is asleep. And, you just tell yourself these stories that just, oh gosh,
Yeah. Yeah. It makes it feel even worse. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
So I know we've talked a lot about getting sleep. I just want to point out that if a mom is sleeping too much, of course, that is a concern. But mostly in this time frame, most of the women that we're dealing with are not getting enough sleep. And so that's why I focus on this need to get that 4 to 5 hours of uninterrupted sleep. The other really big thing is that if mom cannot fall asleep, if she can't fall asleep or stay asleep, that's a concern. So again, whenever I'm talking to a new mom on the phone or in support group or whatever, we do spend a lot of time talking about sleep, about how her sleep is and what she can do to maximize it.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are really great points. Thank you. And with the oversleeping or not, just feeling tired all the time, that's often a symptom of depression. It could be something else, but definitely something to take a look at a little more deeply. Yeah. Thank you for that. Anything else you'd like to wrap up with? Hopeful messages for moms out there?
Oh, I'll just repeat the message that we all know, that you moms who are going through this, you are not alone, you are not to blame, and with help, you will be well, and that there is help out there. Postpartum Support International has volunteers in so many states and chapters now. If anybody is looking for help, that's a great place to start, and that, you can get through this, and please, let somebody know that you need help.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to talk with you about all this. And, I just love doing this work and helping moms get back on their feet.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for being out there and doing all of the beautiful work that you do and for sharing this with us today. It's so helpful.
All right. Thanks so much, Kat. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you. It's so nice to have these really concrete steps highlighted for us. So it doesn't have to be a mystery. These are things that we can do to get ourselves feeling better, things that you can do or support the people that you are helping and get them the care that they need as well. Postpartum Support Virginia has a beautiful form that has all of this written out that you're welcome to go to their website and print out at postpartumva.org. The sheet is called Path to Wellness. You can also find them on Facebook at Postpartum Support VA. If this is your first time joining us on the Mom and Mind podcast, please find us wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe so you can get all of these episodes downloaded to you right to your fingertips. Listen whenever you want and share the ones that you think would be really helpful to someone in need. You can connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at Mom and Mind. So glad you could be with us today. Until next time. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please share this podcast. Together we can support moms and families so that no one has to deal with this alone. Come connect with us at momandmind.com.